Hello, Sharif here. And today we're going to hopefully have a glitch free experience. I apologize to those of you who signed up um, on Tuesday to find out there was no sound. Um, and I hope that our StreamYard hosts have figured out how to not do that again, and we can kind of go on from there. Um, this is for those of you who attended the last series, "The View Inside the Chrysalis." You're going to notice a very similar format, but a very different kind of format also. Because we're counting down. We're counting down to the time when we actually do something in the world. And right now we've got 146 days, 4 hours, 58 minutes, and some seconds to get us to the 21st of March, 2024. And at that time, we're going to launch something. We're going to launch the nation of Gaia. I'll talk more about that in a few minutes. But what we're going to do uh, is from now until that time, we're going to do the countdown to Gaia. How do we launch a global movement for a mature, inclusive, decent human society living on a healing and habitable planet? How do we actually do that? One of the great things about it is that it's never been done before, which means we can all make it up as we go along. I don't mean to be flippant about that, but I think that we have to be uh, careful not to bog down in the immensity of it, and also be careful not to um, either treat it lightly or treat it so seriously that no, this handful of people can't do anything like that. I was struck by the first time I went to Prague right after the Velvet Revolution. I was scheduled to visit with Václav Havel, the brand new president, and I waited outside the waiting room for a long time, and they were in the middle of a crisis and didn't get to visit him. But I was talking to some of the other folks in the castle, and they were saying that every hour they would stop and have a laugh break, and the laugh was, "We're the government." This handful of poets and housewives and others who had no governmental experience whatsoever were now the government of a country. It can happen that fast for us, but not the government of a country, but the government of an entire planet. It's never been done before, but it doesn't mean it can't be done. Okay, I'm getting into my preaching mode here, and what I want to do before that is get into meditation mode. And it's in the meditation mode that Gaia's consciousness speaks to me, and at the same time speaks to you, and at the same time speaks to all of us. And all of us humans, and at the same time is speaking to all other living beings. Once we get to that notion that we're not all that special, that is the consciousness that's special, and I'm borrowing that consciousness, then the consciousness can get activated in ways that we can't even comprehend. So before that happens, though, we're going to spend a 5-minute meditation. and I'm setting my timer, my stopwatch for 5 minutes. And when we're doing this meditation, we're really focusing in on our shared consciousness. We're focusing in on the consciousness of all humans, no divisions, the consciousness of all living beings, no separations, the consciousness that is mine, but is also all other beings. And that consciousness will get us to a higher state of consciousness. Um, so let's begin. And this is not um, a guided or led meditation. I am going to ask you to, if you feel comfortable, close your eyes. I am going to ask you to take some deep breaths. I'm going to ask you to let go of what's happening in your room or wherever you are. And finally, I'll ask you to open yourself to a shared consciousness, the consciousness of all. Okay, I'm going to invite us all to come back to our center, come back to participating in our live stream here. Um, it's interesting. No, this isn't going to work. There's way too much glare on it. Um, um, it's always interesting to uh, feel the sense of time. Sometimes a 5 minute meditation feels like a half an hour goes by. You get so deep into it, or sometimes it goes by in a flash, and that felt like 5 minutes to me. So I thought that was interesting. Okay, so I'm going to do something tonight that because our last live stream had a technical difficulty, I'm going to try to take the concepts I was going to present last time and the concepts I was going to present this time and do them both at the same time. That's going to probably take us about 30 minutes. Adding to that, the time that we just spent in our meditation, it may take us another 30 minutes from now to get that done. We'll see how quickly it goes, and hopefully, you can hang in there with this process. The big question, and the first question that we have for tonight, um, is what's going to happen on the 21st of March, 2024? Good question. Um, we know what has, we know that our intention is to start the process of birthing the nation of Gaia. Because we've never birthed a planetary consciousness and a planetary governance structure and a planetary economic system, we don't know how to do that. Anybody who says they know how to do that, show me where it's been done before. What planet did you do this on before? Okay. Um, so we don't know how it's done, um, but we will figure this out as we go along. Um, we know what happened 247 years ago. We know what happened in a hot room in Independence Hall in Philadelphia. We know that it started a process that um, is still going, that started from the highest aspiration and has now gotten, well, I was going to say creaky, but way beyond creaky. It's now gotten toxic. It's time to have a new structure, but I don't want to disparage the activity or disparage the intention of our founders. They were flawed human beings, but who isn't? I haven't met too many perfect human beings, besides myself, of course. Um, oh, by the way, I would suggest when we do these, make yourself a cup of tea because I'm drinking one, and let's relax into our these presentations together. And especially since Portland has turned cold, it keeps keeping me warm. Um, we know that 247 years ago, with the best of intentions, there was the birthing of the American nation. Um, uh, Conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Also conceived in slavery and dedicated to the proposition that some men are a whole lot more equal than others. the lack of clarity in that declaration, the lack of clarity in that process is what led to the problems we're dealing with right now. The baby gets birthed with the highest level of consciousness that we've got. And unfortunately, our founders 247 years ago didn't have the kind of consciousness that we would hope that they would have had. And that's how we got to the Civil War. That's how we got to America's apartheid system. That's how we got to where we are right now as a society. We also know that the people that we call our lineage, or lineage of societal transformation, that each of them birthed a new way of thinking, a new level of consciousness that brought through a deeper level of consciousness on our planet. We know that 76 years ago, Mohandas Gandhi shifted the consciousness in India to the point that it led to Indian independence and the end of British rule. We know that Martin Luther King Jr. shifted the consciousness of America that led to our first expression of democracy. Everything that happened before then wasn't democracy when you cut out huge chunks of human beings. And let's see, women, that's a fairly large chunk. Blacks, another fairly large chunk. So this started the process of true representative democracy in America 59 years ago. We also know that 34 years ago, Václav Havel and the other signers of Občanský Forum led to the freedom of the Czechoslovakian people and led to the end of Soviet domination. I mean, these were the last gasps of a system and a structure and a government that no longer exists. And we know that 29 years ago, through the work of Nelson Mandela and the other activists for democracy, and they just call it that. The idea that if you're living in a society, you should be able to vote for who you are represented by. That ended an entire system of African apartheid. Now we are faced with a whole new way of looking at ourselves on the planet, looking at how poorly we're being governed right now. And I'm not talking about the American government. I'm not talking about the South African government. I'm not talking about the schizophrenic government of Israel Palestine, one being with two brains and two hearts. I'm talking about all of them. That there's something that regardless of the fact that there's voting and things like that, there's something about what's going on in South Africa, in Israel, Palestine, in Pakistan, in China, in India. I'm talking about big blocks of human beings where our highest human aspirations are not being met, are not being seen. We are not being represented by our representatives. That what it's going to take is for everyone in the US Congress to change their consciousness. Okay, so snap your fingers and make that happen. And nothing will change because they're bought and paid for by all of our mega corporations. So we have to change the consciousness of all the mega corporations. So I'm going to snap my fingers twice, and this way we're going to change all of the Congress folks and all of the CEOs of these major transnational corporations. And then you know that things still won't change because they are bolstered by the consciousness of you, of me, and everybody else on this planet. So I can't expect change to come from those people over there changing their consciousness. And that's how we've been trying to program most of the change that is happening on the planet right now. We always point our fingers at those people, and they're the problem. Democrats point their fingers at Republicans. Republicans point their fingers at Democrats. Whites point their fingers at blacks and people of color. Blacks and people of color point their fingers at whites. Rich people point their fingers at poor people. Poor people point their fingers at rich people. And we need to stop doing that because that is not helpful. But no more than just not being helpful, it actually locks our thinking in place because it gets us thinking that an I am separate from a you. As long as I think that I am separate from my neighbors, all 8 billion of us, as long as I think that I am separate from the whales, from the trees, from the plankton in the ocean, from all of the living beings on the planet, I'm going to continue to act the way that I'm acting. As soon as I start the process of seeing all of this as all my relations, that every living being that I can conceive of is I am part of it. I'm an integral part of it. Once we get there, we can start seeing where we should be going. Okay, I'm going to pause for 1 second, take a sip of tea, and then I'm going to go to the theme of the real theme for tonight, which is how do we turn the aspirations that are in our hearts into a movement that's actually going to make the changes I'm talking about. When we think about what happens in a birthing process, at a given point, the being readied to be birthed gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. If you've been close to that process, it's somewhere between miraculous and scary. How big can the vessel get before it pops? And all sorts of changes start taking place around this vessel. And I talk about a lot of them in my book, Birthing the Nation of Gaia. The question, though, is how do we get to um, that moment where birth takes place? How do we turn the aspirations that's in our hearts into a movement, into things that actually are going to ask that we move? Moving from where to where. And you've heard me say this before, almost all of the things that we have been looking at as ills of our society, the problem is that we keep asking somebody else to solve the problem. We keep denying that we have a role in changing that situation. We keep not seeing how my actions are an integral part of the problem. And I keep saying, I keep talking about this, but I keep not getting an image of it, a picture of it, and I need to do that for the next time. But there's an image bouncing around on the internet, and the image is simply of a little piece of trash, a little piece of cloth blowing in the wind on Mars. We have dumped so much of our techno garbage on that planet that we've now polluted the planet. We're looking, what we should be looking at is a pristine landscape, and it's got trash all over it. It's got tons of trash on it because that's our mentality. Our mentality, I'm saying our mentality. Because if you drive a car, you're part of that problem. I'm pointing right here, I am part of that problem. All of us have to change our consciousness to the point that we recognize that we are holding back the aspirations of our planet. We have to make a change. And our change is very specific. We have to change our intentions. I intend to live in a world, on a planet that works for all living beings. That's my intention. I intend to live in the nation of Gaia, the nation that will be healing our planet. That's my intention. I intend to move away from anything and everything that holds us back from that. So that gives us a focus and a perspective that we can get a handle on. So it's not. I'm not putting anybody down for having this level of consciousness, but as you know, there are organizations that are focused on carbon emissions, 350 parts per million or per billion. I can't remember which one it is. And that we're getting above that line, and we need to be below that line. And that's an aspiration. But I can't see that, number one. Number two, if I could snap my fingers and get carbon emissions below the 350 level, we've got 100 other problems going on. And all of them, every single problem has the same solution, and that solution is shifting our consciousness. So let's look at what we need to be doing to um, get that shift going. Um, and in the book, Birthing the Nation of Gaia, I talk about this in terms of the 5 beyonds. Okay. Um, if I intend to live in the nation of Gaia, I intend to live beyond geography. Right now, billions and billions of dollars are spent separating people who live in one area of geography from people who live in the other area of geography. And in reality, human beings live on this planet, and we should be living anywhere and everywhere on the planet. We need to have a planetary perspective. People who say that we live on a small planet, they've never been around it because it ain't that small. And you look down. I mean, when I've traveled the world, you look down and you go for hours and hours and hours, and you see no signs of human beings or little tiny signs of human beings. And then you come across a city where everybody's living on top of each other, and you build these mounds up, really, these mounds we call skyscrapers up, so that people can't get a perspective. We think that the earth is filled with human beings when you're in these big cities, and and we don't recognize that they're spaced out to the point that we can live on a habitable planet. We can develop a planetary perspective for humanity. The earth is not overpopulated by humans. The earth is overpopulated by the way that we are doing humanity. Second piece is our getting our perspective beyond exclusivity, beyond this notion of that I am separate from you, and we are separate from those people over there. Coupled with that is the notion of being beyond violence. Again, a huge part of the human product, the human the humanity's output in the world. A huge part of that is violence. It's so baked into the structure of breaker consciousness, of breaker society, that it's really hard to imagine how we can do a society without violence. But we can. Once we develop a perspective of peace and security, we can get beyond all that stuff. Our fourth beyond is beyond money. We can have a perspective that honors true wealth. And I don't mean, the paper in your pocket. I'm talking about all of the systems and structures that we know of and that pull at our hearts and are coming from our hearts, of which the idea of money and money exchange is a tiny little itty bitty part of it. And then the last of the beyonds is beyond religion and beyond culture, to develop a true spiritual perspective to have a perspective that uh, is so focused that we can leave behind all of the separations that keep us from being able to live together. Well, obviously, if we do all that, we are going to be living in a fundamentally different world. And if we do all that, we then will be able to address that thing that I've called, and those of you who have done the view from inside the chrysalis will remember the 12 global challenges, the parts of our planet where everybody on the planet is affected by this. Everybody on the planet is affected by issues of security, is affected by issues of water, food, energy, health, politics, economics, education, habitat, ecology, media, and spiritual cultural issues. Once we see this, once we stop grubbing for money, once we stop separating from each other, once we stop being violent toward each other, once we start acting like humanity is one species, we will have all the resources we need to address all of this stuff. Until we do that, until we change our consciousness, we won't have any, and we will have the we will continue this process of separating from each other. We'll continue the process of asking ourselves, how can I make more money? How can I get more of this? How can I stop those people over there from doing whatever it is they're doing? And we'll slide closer and closer to the problem. Now, we're not going to do that. And we're not going to do that because there's enough of us on the planet right now that are ready to change our intentions and change the way that this game is being played. Okay, so this puts us at about 40 minutes, and I think that we did a good job of that. I noticed that there are a number, and this is from our prior perspective. If I don't have my glasses on, I can't read the comment section. I will address the comments that came up today, on Tuesday, and actually try to weave them into our Tuesday presentation. If you haven't gotten the book, Birthing the Nation of Gaia, I would strongly urge you to do that. Go to commonway.org, go to the shop, and buy all the books. But you should definitely be reading and looking at Birthing the Nation of Gaia. It is a change in our perspective and how we see the world. Until next time, may all beings be well. May all beings be secure. May all beings be happy. I look forward to seeing you on Tuesday, and take care until